May.
So I think where we left off, I was at the overhead, and I was going to show you, or ask you some questions about, this is 254, the photo you took, is that right?
Yes.
And the location of where you were when you took this photograph, you described that as where?
Being inside the DJ booth.
Okay. And you were facing another part of the club.
Yes.
And what part of the club was that?
It's the main floor.
I'm just going to put on 349.
The main room.
Okay. And is this indicating main room here?
Yes.
So what direction were you faced out?
Facing down towards the main room and the dance floor.
Okay. So are you, is it fair to say you're somewhere in here, sir?
Yes.
And the defendant was where?
Around the letter M.
Yeah. And you see this item here?
Yes.
Do you know what that is?
The column?
Just to show you for orientation purposes, is that shown there?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I have nothing further.
Nothing from us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, if I could call Akil Joseph, please.
Right this way, sir. Please follow me. You're going to raise your right hand, face the clerk.
So I'm swear your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Have a seat.
Yeah. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Could you state your full name?
Akil Joseph.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you to keep your voice up so we all can hear you.
Akil Joseph.
And can you spell your first name?
A-K-I-L.
A-K-I-L.
Yes.
And your last name, sir?
Joseph. J-O-S-E-P-H.
Okay. How old are you, sir?
25.
And where were you born?
Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay. And how long have you lived in Boston?
Since 2004, consistently.
Okay, since 2004. And prior to that, where were you living?
Antigua.
And Antigua, how long did you live there?
Well, my mom took me there when I was a baby, so I
Okay.
would say.
So you were born in Boston. Shortly thereafter, you lived for some portion of your life in Antigua?
Yes.
And then came back here in approximately 2004.
Yes.
How old were you when you returned?
I was 14.
And did you go to school in the city of Boston?
Yes.
Now, did you know a man by the name of Odin Lloyd?
Yes.
And how did you know him?
He was a good friend of mine.
And how did you first meet Odin Lloyd?
Well, I used to frequent Boston because, like I said, I was born here, so I used to come on summer vacation, so I knew him.
Okay. And I'm just going to ask you to try and keep your voice up so we can hear you.
All right.
I'm sorry, so you had met him during summer vacations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you, during the time that you were living in Antigua, did you come here in the summers?
Yes.
And when you came in the summers, were you staying with relatives?
Yes, my family members.
Your family members. And during that time, did you first make the acquaintance of Odin Lloyd?
Yes.
And did you know him to have been originally from Antigua?
Yes.
Now, as a result of spending summers and then living here after 2004, just tell us about your friendship with Odin.
Well, we got very close. He was talk all the time.
And just taking you back to June of 2013, how frequently were you seeing him?
I mean,
I'm sorry?
at least three times out of the week.
Okay. And were you working at that time?
Yes.
Where were you working?
Abercrombie and Finch.
Okay. And what were you doing at Abercrombie and Finch?
I was a sales associate.
Okay. And how about Odin? Was he working?
Yes.
And where was he working?
He was doing. I can't remember exactly what he was working at, but I know he was doing. What was it? Electrician.
Okay. And did you know him to work for an electric company that sometimes caused him to travel?
Yes.
And directing your attention now to June 14th of 2013. Do you recall that being a Friday?
Yes.
And on that date, did you see Odin Lloyd?
Yes.
And where did you see him?
He was on Facing Street.
And when you say he was on Facing Street, do you know where Odin lived?
Yes.
Where was that?
Facing Street.
Did you spend any time on Facing Street?
Yes.
How much time would you spend in that area?
Well, I frequent the area.
Okay. Have you ever been to his home?
Yes.
Do you know his family members?
Yes.
How many times have you been to his home?
Couldn't tell you. A lot. I mean, I frequent there.
Okay. And did you have other mutual friends with Odin?
Yes.
And who were your other mutual friends?
Oh, Glenn Roy.
Okay, I'm sorry, is it Glenn Roy?
Yeah. His full name.
And if you could really speak into the
Glenn.
microphone and speak up, please.
No problem.
Okay. And is that Glenn Roy Hebert?
Yeah, Glenn Roy.
Okay, and who else?
Javid.
Okay, and Javid is who?
Jules.
Jules?
Yes.
Okay. Now, on June 14, 2013, was that a special occasion of sorts?
Yeah, it was actually Jules' birthday.
And at some point in the course of that day, did you have a conversation with Odin or these other friends about that being Jules' birthday?
Yes.
Did you make a plan to do something on that day?
Yes.
And what was the plan?
Well, we were gonna go out to a club. Well, it wasn't show a club.
Okay. When you say we're going to go out to a club, what kind of club?
Oh, and I mean like a bar.
Okay. And when you first had, what time was it when you first had a conversation with any of these friends of yours?
And it was early in the day after work.
And when you say early in the day after work, approximately what time?
2:33.
And where were you when you had this conversation?
On Facing Street.
And who was present for the conversation?
Odin, Javid, Glenn Roy, and I think Kwame was there too. Kwame.
Okay. And so, just so we understand, there's yourself and Odin,
Yes.
and you indicated an individual by the name of Javid.
Yes. Jules. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So is that a sort of a nickname?
Yes.
Okay. What is Javid's full name?
It's Javid. I keep saying Javid. It's Javid.
Is it Jules? Oh, you mentioned Jules.
So, Jules Nesbitt.
Okay.
Nesbitt's last name.
Okay. So you refer him as Javid.
Yes.
And is that Javid?
Yes.
Okay. And so there's Javid, yourself, Odin, Glenroy,
Yes.
and that's Glenroy Hebert,
Yeah.
and the last person you mentioned, Kwame.
Kwame.
Okay. Now, do you know Kwame's full name?
No.
Okay. Was Kwame one of your friends?
No, it wasn't close.
Okay. Do you know whose friend he was, or how he was connected to your group?
Well, Kwame is Javid's cousin.
Javid being Jules.
Jules, sorry.
Okay. So, Jules Nesbitt.
Yes.
Okay. So, but was he present when you were all talking about going out to celebrate his cousin Javid's birthday?
Yes, he was.
Okay. And so at that time, what was the plan, if there was one?
Well, the plan was to just, like I said, go to a club, but I wasn't sure what club.
Okay. Did you make a plan to talk later that evening about what you would do?
Yes.
Now, later in the evening, did you have a phone conversation with Odin?
Yes.
And approximately what time, if you remember?
I mean, we was already heading to the club, so let's say 12.
Okay, so when you say we were already heading to the club, who was heading to the club?
Me, Kwame, Javid, being Jules, Glenroy, and myself.
Okay. So how many is that total?
5.
Okay, so there were 5 of you. Where was Odin at that time, if you know?
Well, I think he was at home.
Okay, and as a result of that, did you call him?
Yes.
And were you able to get through to him?
Yes.
And did you have a conversation, just yes or no?
Yep.
Did you tell him where you were going?
No, he didn't. No.
Okay. Did you have a later conversation about where you were going?
Yes.
Okay, and how long after the first conversation?
Probably a couple minutes.
And where did you tell him you were going?
I told him I was going downtown to venue.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I told him we were going downtown to venue,
Okay.
nightclub.
Okay, and venue is what?
A nightclub.
Okay. And do you know where it's located downtown?
Well, not exactly, but in the theater district.
And did the 5 of you then travel to that club venue?
Yes.
And just tell us what you did when you arrived there.
Got in the line.
I'm sorry?
Got in the line.
Okay, and approximately what time was it?
It was, I mean, it was after it was anything after 12. Cause,
After 12?
After 12, yeah.
Is that midnight?
yes.
Okay. When you say you got in the line, how big was the line at that time?
It was only a few people.
Okay. And at some point after getting in line, did you actually go into the club?
Yes.
Now, are you familiar with any other club that's near venue?
Yes.
And what other club is near venue?
Rumor,
Okay.
Underbar.
I'm sorry?
Rumor and Underbar.
Okay. Rumor and Underbar.
Yes.
And how close is Rumor to venue?
They're next door to another.
And when you traveled together, how did you travel?
We were in the same car.
Okay, and who was driving?
Kwame.
Kwame, okay. And now once you arrived, just tell us about, at around midnight, how long was the wait before you actually got into the bar?
I mean, it wasn't a few minutes.
Okay, so approximately what time would you say you arrived at the bar or club?
We got in a little bit past 1.
Okay. Now, to get to venue, do you know where the entrance to venue is?
The entrance and the
Let me just ask it this way. Is there a separate or same entrance to venue or to Rumor?
they're separate.
I'm just going to show you, if I could, Your Honor, what was marked as 316. Sir, do you recognize the scene depicted in this photograph marked 316?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what do you recognize this to be?
The entrance of Rumor and venue.
Now, you see Rumor here on the left side of this photograph,
Yes.
and if I pointed down to this area, would you recognize that as venue?
Yes.
And you said there was a line, a short line, to get in. Which door were you at?
I was venue. The door that says venue, the green sign.
Oh, okay, the green
Green
sign
on
here,
it.
so on the right.
Green and black.
Did you also see a line that, or any people going in and out of Rumor?
Yes.
So you really need to speak up.
Sorry.
Okay, and so when you went to that, when you went to venue, at some point did you, you and your friends go inside?
Yes.
And is there a connection inside between venue and Rumor?
Yes.
Okay. And how can you access, or can you access rumor from venue?
I'm not sure how you get to it yet, but you could get there.
Okay. Had you ever been to either of these clubs before?
Yeah, probably once.
Okay. When you say once, was that beforehand?
Yes.
Now, at some point after going into the club, did you have an occasion to see Odin?
Yes.
How long after you arrived at the, actually got inside the club, would you say you saw Odin?
Probably 15 minutes.
And just tell us, how was it that you saw him?
Oh, he came up to me.
Okay, where were you?
I was standing in front of the DJ booth.
Okay, and when you say you stand inside or in front of the DJ booth, where was the DJ booth located?
Exactly in front of the dance floor.
Was that in the venue or the rumor side?
The room side.
Now, when you said he came up to you, was he with anybody?
Yes.
And who was he with?
Glenroy.
I'm sorry?
Glenroy.
Glenroy. And Glenroy, that's one of your friends?
Yes.
And just tell us about the interaction you saw between, or just in terms of Odin, how did he appear at that time?
Nothing was unusual. Regular.
Okay. And did you have a conversation with him? Just yes or no?
At the time, yes.
And did he offer to get you something?
Yes.
And what was that?
A drink.
Okay. And did he do that?
Yes.
Okay. So did you have an opportunity to talk to him while you were in the club?
Yes.
Approximately how long were you talking to him?
A few minutes.
Okay. And at some point then, did you see him go toward the bar?
Yes.
And did you see him after that?
Yeah.
Okay. And did he come back with something?
Yes.
And what was that?
The drink.
Okay. Now, when you saw Odin, did you see him socializing with any of your other friends?
Yes.
Who else was he socializing with?
Glenroy.
And where were you and Glenroy and Odin socializing?
Over at in the same vicinity in front of the DJ booth.
So I'm placing what's marked 349 on the overhead. Do you recognize what's laid out here in this diagram?
Yes.
Okay, what do you recognize this area to represent?
The room.
I'm sorry, sir?
The club, the nightclub.
Okay. Now, you've been describing an area referred to as a DJ booth.
Yes.
Do you see that shown on this diagram?
Yes.
Okay, just point it out if you would, sir. And you're indicating right here.
Yes.
Now, when you said, when you first saw Odin, where were you?
In this area. In the front.
And you're indicating in this area?
Yes.
And did you see from what direction he came?
Yes.
Okay, where did he come from?
This area.
And you're indicating down in here? And did he approach you or you approach him?
Well, they approached me.
Okay. When you say they, he was with?
Glenroy.
Okay. And where, when you said you had been socializing with him for a few minutes, where was that occurring?
The same area that was in the front.
You're indicating right in here, sir?
Yes.
Now, approximately what time was this that you were socializing with Odin and Glenroy in front of the DJ booth?
I wasn't tracking the time, so I can't put an exact time on it.
Okay. And at some point, did any of your other friends, or the people who would come with Kwame, were they also?
You guys speak up, nobody can hear you.
Sir.
Nobody in the public can hear you.
All right.
Okay, yeah, really project and pull that, if you would, that microphone close to you. So when you when you were socializing or visiting with Odin and Glenn Roy, did any of your other friends or the people who come with you join up with you?
Well, yeah, it was all in the same vicinity.
Okay, when you say all in the same vicinity, just show us where that vicinity is.
Same area in front of the DJ.
You're indicating the same area in front of the DJ booth.
Yes.
Okay. Who else was there?
Same, everybody that came with, all four guys. Five guys.
So there's yourself and there's the other four?
Yes.
Okay. And just tell us about their interaction with Odin.
And it was regular, I mean, it was calm.
And when you say regular, what do you mean by that?
Like, I didn't see nothing that wasn't regular, like, it was everyday interaction.
Okay, everyday interaction.
Meaning,
How many, oh, I'm sorry.
no, so I didn't see nothing different about the situation that was going on at the time.
And how many occasions prior to this night had you seen the interaction between Odin and Glenn Roy and Jules?
I mean, it's a regular occurrence. We hang out almost every day.
Now, how long did you remain at the club that night?
Till it was time to go. Till it was over.
And how did you know what time it was time to go?
Well, they turned the lights on, I think, a couple minutes prior.
And during the time that you were at the club, where did you spend your time?
The majority of the time was spent same place in front of the DJ booth.
I don't know if I could use the overhead again. Yeah. So I'm just going to show you what was marked 354. Now, do you recognize just the area inside what's shown by this photograph?
Yes.
What do you recognize it to be?
Front of the DJ booth.
Now, obviously zoomed it in a little bit. Do you recognize any people in this photograph?
Yes.
Who do you
Yes.
recognize?
Javid and Kwame.
Okay. And when you say Javid and Kwame, can you just point to them? Where would they be located?
Javid.
Okay, and you're saying Javid, you're pointing over here?
Yes.
Is that, do I have the pen on Javid?
Yes.
Okay. And what about Kwame?
The red and black wasn't straight.
Red and black. Do you recognize anybody else?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Myself.
When you say yourself, you're pointing to what?
The aqua. Five.
This individual right here?
Yes.
And this individual right behind you,
Yes.
did you know who this person was that night?
I think that night, no.
Did you have any interaction with him?
No.
Did you see Odin having any interaction?
No.
Who did you see Odin interaction with?
Glenn Roy.
How long, sir, did you remain at the club?
Till it was time to go.
Okay.
Till the club
And then you indicate the lights had come on,
Yes.
and when the lights came on, what did you do?
Began to exit the club, but make sure everybody that came was around.
Now, from where you were, at that point, did you make it to an exit?
Yes.
Was that any different than the way you had actually come in?
Yes.
And when you left, were you with your friends?
Yes.
And who was with you?
Me, Kwame, Javid, and Jules, and Glenn.
And with regard to when you left, where did you, after you actually went outside the club, do you know where you went?
Well, I turned to go to the parking lot where he came from.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could play 350. Sir, I'm just going to have you focus your attention on that monitor to your left. Now, sir, the individual now in the front part of that video, did you recognize him that night, see that individual at all that night?
Did I see him? Yes, I did.
Oh, okay, you have to speak up, sir.
Did I see him that night in the club?
Yes.
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Did I see the guy? Yes.
Okay. Did you recognize him at that time?
Well, I can't to tell you the truth from the images. There was only a couple of people in there with hats, so I think it's the same person
Okay.
from what I've seen tonight.
Let me ask you,
Yeah.
just back up a second. A moment ago, I showed you a photograph
Yes.
of an individual that was right next to you.
Yes.
And that individual, if I could,
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection is sustained if you're going to ask the person to compare the two. Objection is sustained.
that wasn't my intention.
Well,
Your Honor, just
If you want to put that picture back on, you meant.
Sir, this, a few minutes ago, I had asked you about an individual shown in this picture and asked you if you had recognized that person that night.
No.
And later on, did you recognize a person from that night?
Later on, yes.
Objection to the form of the question.
Objection sustained.
At some point, well, when did you recognize that person?
Objection on that foundation.
Objection sustained.
Did you later recognize somebody?
Yes.
Okay, who was that?
Hernandez.
Okay. And how was it that you recognized Aaron Hernandez?
Seen it on the news.
Okay. Okay, so you saw a picture.
Picture.
Okay. And when you saw that picture, had you seen him before in person?
Prior, no.
Okay. So that night, you don't recall ever having seen him?
No.
Now, when you, if you could, this is still on Exhibit 350. Okay, right, if you'd stop right there. Do you see anybody on the video screen that you recognize?
Yes.
Okay, who do you recognize?
Odin and Javid.
Okay. And if I could just have the pointer. Okay, where is Odin in this? Okay, and is the pointer accurately depicting where you're pointing?
Yes.
Okay, who is that?
Odin Lloyd.
Is that how he appeared that night at the club?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the individual to his immediate right, do you recognize that person?
Yes, I do.
Who do you recognize that to be?
Javid.
Okay, Javid also?
Jules.
Jules Nesbitt?
Yes.
And you see another individual then to Jules's right. You know, I'm going to ask that the video be played just a few frames. Okay. Do you recognize that individual?
Yes.
Who do you recognize that to be?
Glenroy Hargrove.
Okay, now if we can stop there. Do you recognize the individual on the right side of the screen?
Yes.
Who is that?
Kwame.
And there's another individual in the center between Kwame and the woman. Do you recognize that person?
No, I do not.
Do you recognize this gentleman now coming into the video?
Yes.
Who is that?
It's me.
I'm just going to ask you to continue to focus. Okay, now, do you see anybody you recognize in this video?
Yes.
Who do you recognize?
Odin.
Okay, and where is he in the video?
Directly in front of the door.
Is that reflecting Odin?
Yes.
Okay. And how about right there?
That's Javid, Jules.
Okay. And, okay,
Glenroy Herbert in front of him.
I'm sorry, could you identify, where is Javid?
He's in front of the door, exiting.
He's exiting the door?
Yes,
So
and door.
could we just put the pointer, is that the individual you're referring to?
Yes,
Okay. And you said Glenroy, where is he?
in front of the door.
Is that him there?
Yes.
And you recognize, stop. Did you recognize somebody who just came on the video and is now on the left-hand side?
On the left.
Can we back that up just a tad, please? Okay, right there. Do you recognize that person?
Could you put the... I have no idea which person you're talking about. Put the pointer so I could...
That one, right?
person. Kind of looks like Quan. Yeah.
Okay. And right there, do you recognize yourself?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, after you exited the club, and Your Honor, if I could play from 315, please. Did you and your friends go somewhere?
Yes,
Where did you go?
to the parking lot.
Okay. Now, prior to going to the parking lot, is that where the car was?
Yes.
Prior to going there, did you go somewhere outside of the club?
Yeah, I think we crossed the street.
Okay. Just going to have you direct your attention. Now, if you could just hold it there, please. Tell us, when you came out of the club, did you see where your other friends had gone?
Well, yeah, yes.
Okay, and where had they gone?
Well, everybody I went to, Glenroy I went to go turn to the other side, he went to go talk to a girl. Javid was still with me, and Kwame was right next to me too.
Okay. How much after Odin leaving did you leave the club?
How much? Probably we all left around the same time.
Okay. Is that accurately reflected by the video?
Yes.
Okay. Now, where did you last see Odin?
That night,
That night, yes, sir.
in front of the club, across the street.
And when you saw him, who was he with?
He was kind of standing by himself.
Okay. And did you have a conversation with him?
Yes.
And just describe him at that time.
He was his usual self to me.
Okay. And did you see anyone else with him?
No.
Okay. Within the following minutes, did you see anybody with him?
Yes, Glenroy came up to him like right after a couple minutes.
Okay. And when you saw Glenroy come up to him, how long did they talk?
I not sure.
Okay. And then after that, did you see where Odin went?
Not 100%, but he wasn't with me. He went the opposite direction.
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
I'm sorry, I couldn't even hear.
And if you have a
Did you see where he
recollection, you may
went?
testify.
All right,
And if you could keep your voice up when you do testify, please.
no problem.
Okay. I think my question was, did you see where he went? Just yes or no?
No.
Okay. If we could continue to play 315, please. Do you know where you are during this time?
In the video, no.
Okay, not in the video, but
At
how
the time.
long, how long did you remain in the area after you came out of the club?
Couple minutes.
And during that time, where were you?
And on the next to the other side of the street,
And who was in that vicinity with you?
the people that I came with, and Odin.
Okay. And, okay, if we could continue to play, please. Okay. Now, I'm just going to have you focus your attention on the video. Do you see anybody now that you recognize?
Yes.
And who do you recognize?
Odin.
Okay, and where is Odin?
Next.
Is the pointer on him?
Yes.
Okay. And who else do you see?
Glenroy.
I'm sorry, Glenroy?
Yes.
And just point him out, please. Is that Glenroy?
Yes.
And who else?
Myself.
And where are you in relation to Glenroy?
Right next to him.
Is that you?
Yes.
And
Bike.
this gentleman with the tie, do you know who he is?
Yes.
And who is that?
Bike.
And was he somebody who joined you that night?
Yes.
And was he one of your regular friends?
No.
Do you know who he was friendly with, or why he had accompanied you on the night of Jules' birthday?
Well, he was just visiting from Antigua at the time. He was just trying to go out with it.
Okay. And if we could play for the next few, right, if we could stop right there, please. Now, do you see anybody else that you had gone to the club with that night?
Yes.
And who is that?
Kwame.
Okay, and where's Kwame shown in this? Is that Kwame?
Yes.
And anybody else?
Javid.
Javid.
And Jules.
Or Jules. Okay, and where is he? And does that show where he was, where the pointer was?
Yes.
Okay. Now, where is Javid from originally?
Antigua.
And what about Kwame?
Antigua.
And Bite?
Antigua.
And Glenroy?
Antigua.
Okay. And what happened now after you, with regard to after you crossed the street, what did you guys do? How long did you stay there?
Few minutes.
Okay. And Odin, did you see where he went?
Yes.
Okay, and where did he go?
He was on the same side of the street, but he was like a little bit down, like a little crossing.
Okay. And had he indicated to you before he left this area where he was going?
Objection.
Overall, to the extent he's expressing an intention to do something, you may testify.
Did he indicate that he intended to go somewhere or not?
No.
Okay. Now, does the video show the area where you all were?
Yes.
And how about where Odin is?
Yes.
Now, at this time, did you all go off the video?
Yes.
And in what direction are you heading?
Right away from the club.
Okay, and is that in, where is your car?
In the parking lot.
And is that in that direction going off the video?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see Odin after this?
No, I didn't.
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this time. I believe the witness has testified and he's gone.
I'm going to ask him about somebody else who comes in the video. Thank you.
Objections overruled.
Just going to, this individual down here, do you recognize him?
No, I don't.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you to focus on him as we play forward. And again, just focusing your attention, I'm sorry, as this thing, as the video plays forward. Do you see, if we could just stop right there, do you see that individual now?
Yes, I do.
Do you recognize him?
Yes.
Who is that?
Golden Lloyd.
Okay. Okay, if we could just stop right there. Now, there's an individual who's just come onto the street. Do you recognize that person?
Yes. No. Yes.
Who is that?
Hernandez.
No, I'm sorry. Let me put the pointer. That individual right there.
Oh, just Glen. Sorry, Glenroy.
That's Glenn Roy?
Yes.
Okay. And if we could just play from there, please. Okay, do you see this gentleman right there?
Yes.
Okay, and do you recognize who that is?
No.
You know what, we'll play it.
Not from the image. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, who do you recognize that to be?
Odin Wood.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you,
Is that-
actually, we could play. Okay, and now right there, do you see somebody near Odin?
Yes.
Who is that?
Glenroy.
Do you see where they are?
Yes.
I'm just going to ask to back that up 15 seconds before this point. Now, just focusing on Glenn Roy. Okay, if we can stop right there, please. Can you continue? You see where Glenn Roy is?
At that time.
Right there. Do you see, can you see Glenn Roy in that video?
Right, I think this is him.
Okay, just if we could. Is that where you're pointing?
Yes.
And Odin is where? Okay. We could play, please. See Glenn Roy now,
Yes.
and is he moving to that original location where you were?
Yes.
Did he, when you were going to your car, at some point, did he leave?
Yes.
And for how long was he gone?
A couple minutes.
Okay. Did he rejoin your group?
Yes.
What happened when he rejoined the group? Did you go somewhere?
Yes.
Where did you go?
Home.
And was it the same 5 who had come together?
Yes.
Now, when you went home, late, that would have been now the early morning hours of Saturday the 15th.
Yes.
Later that day, or at any point later that day, did you see Odin?
Yes.
When did you see him? Approximately what time?
Sometime in the morning.
Okay. And when you say sometime in the morning,
I'll say 11.
11 a.m.?
Something, yeah.
Okay. Where did you see him?
Came to my house.
And when he came to your house, were you sleeping?
Well, I was laying down.
Okay. Did you, as a result of him coming, did you visit with him?
Yes.
And at some point in time, did you and he then socialize during the course of that day?
Yes.
And did you leave your home after he came by?
Yes.
And when you left your home, did you see any vehicle?
Yes.
And what kind of vehicle did you see?
A black Suburban.
And at that time, who was in possession of the black Suburban?
Odin Lloyd.
Okay. Had you ever seen him before with that black Suburban?
No.
You said you socialized during the course of the day. How much time were you with him that day?
I was with him in the morning, like I said, and then I was with him throughout the day. So.
Okay. Now, at some point, did you know Odin to participate in any sports?
Yes.
What sports did he participate in?
Football.
Okay. And at that time, was he playing for a team?
Yes.
What team was he playing?
Boston Bandits.
And had you ever attended any of his games?
Yes.
Did he, on that day, Saturday, June 14th, did he have a game?
Yes.
And where did he play?
The O'Brien Field. O'Brien Madison Field.
O'Brien Madison Field. Where is that located?
Behind the high schools. O'Brien Madison, the high schools.
Did you go to the game?
Yes.
And how long did you, or approximately what time did that game end?
I'm not sure what time it ended.
Okay. Now, after that day, Saturday, did you socialize with him in the evening?
Yes.
The next day, being Sunday now, June 16th, did you see Odin Lloyd?
Yes.
And where did you see him?
At a band launching.
I'm sorry, at a band
Launching.
launching? And just describe, what is a band launching?
A band launching is basically like I would say a cookout that they have to like present the costumes and stuff for the Caribbean Festival, like an annual thing every year.
Okay. And you say there was a Caribbean festival?
Yeah, it's an annual thing that they have every year in Boston.
Okay. And is that held near where you live?
Yes.
Okay. And did you and your friends go to that?
Yes.
Okay. And you described it as something about the costumes?
Yes.
Okay. And what do they do with costumes?
Basically just display the costumes that they're going to be using for that year during the carnival.
I see. And who all went to this band launching or this the costume showing?
It was me, Javid, Glenroy, Odin.
Okay. And how long were you guys there together?
Yes. Well, he came. Well, no, I was there with Kwame and Glenroy.
Okay. And at some point, did Odin come?
Yes.
Okay. And were the group of you socializing there?
Yes.
Now, later, did anyone go anywhere else?
Yes.
And who went where?
Well, me and Kwame and Javid, we went to another band launching.
And where was that?
That was on Evelyn Street, I believe.
Okay. And do you know where Odin went?
No, not sure.
Now, did you have further contact with Odin?
Yes.
When was your next contact with Odin?
Well, later that night.
Okay. And when you say later that night, approximately what time?
I'll say 1:40, 1:30. So, I mean, 1 something. I can't put an exact time.
Okay. And is this 1:30, 1:40 in the morning?
Yes,
And how was it that you had contact with him? Was that in person or by phone?
by phone.
And where were you at that time?
I was at the second band launching on Evelyn Street.
Okay. And as a result of your phone contact, did you see Odin?
Yes,
And when did you see him? How long after you had spoken to him?
a couple minutes.
And when you saw him, just tell us the circumstances of that. How was he traveling?
He was in the black Suburban.
Okay. Had you, do you know what caused, had he come to Evelyn Street?
Well, he was giving me a ride home.
Okay. And what caused him to show up to give you a ride home?
I had asked him
Okay. And so when he showed up, how was he traveling?
in the black Suburban.
And did you then, jump in the Suburban with him?
Yeah,
And where did you go from there?
my house.
Okay. And how long is it from where he picked you up to drive you to your home?
I would say less than 2 miles.
Now, when he picked you up and driving, did you have a conversation with him?
Well, no long conversation, no.
Okay, but just yes or no, did you have a conversation?
Yes,
And did he indicate what he was doing, that he had some intention to do something in the morning or later that
Yes.
morning? And what was that?
well, he had work.
And while you were traveling with him, do you recall him receiving a phone call?
Yes,
And where were you sitting in the black Suburban?
in the passenger seat.
And where was Odin?
He was the driver.
Was there anybody else present in the vehicle?
No,
How close were you to him?
in the passenger seat. So.
Okay. And during the time when you said he received a phone call, could you hear anything from his phone call?
Yes,
Okay, and just with regard to, could you hear either a male or female voice?
yes.
Okay, and what could you hear?
Well, I heard him speaking to a male and a female.
Okay, so the first call, did you hear, which voice did you hear?
A male.
And when you heard that, did you hear a number mentioned?
Yes,
And what number was mentioned?
18.
Okay. Now, did you hear much more of the conversation?
No,
Now, how long after that conversation before you were ultimately dropped off?
a couple minutes.
Okay. And when you were dropped off, did you have a conversation with Odin?
Yeah,
And did you indicate any plan to see him later or the next day?
yes,
Okay. Now, after that, what did you do? Did you go into your home?
yes,
Now, the following day, Monday, June 17, 2013, did you go to work?
yes,
And sometime after work, sometime later in the evening, or let me ask you this, during the course of the day, did you have any contact with Odin?
no, I didn't.
Later in the evening, did somebody contact you?
Yes,
And who was that?
one of my family members.
Okay. And as a result of that, was that by phone or in person?
By phone.
And as a result of that phone contact, did you go somewhere?
Yes,
Where did you go?
to his house.
And when you got to his house, did you learn something?
Yes,
And what was that?
that he passed.
Okay. Now, how long, when you got to his house, how long did you remain at the house?
A couple hours.
And do you know his family members
Yes,
and his friends?
yes,
Did you see them there?
yes,
And did you ever see an individual by the name of Aaron Hernandez at the home?
no,
Had you ever met him or seen him prior to any of this?
no, other than at the club.
Okay. And when you say at the club, you didn't initially remember even seeing him at the club, is that true?
No,
Do you have a memory, did you have a memory after this matter about seeing him at the club?
after the matter, yes.
Okay, and what caused you, or how were you able to remember him at the club?
I mean, they don't, it's only a few, you can't really wear fitted caps in the club. And there was only 2 or 3 people that had on caps in the club. I don't fitted caps.
Okay, and did you recognize him as somebody who had a cap on in the
Yes.
club? If I could have one moment, Your Honor, please. Nothing further. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Joseph.
Good afternoon.
So, Mr. Joseph, you have been contacted by the police and the prosecutors several times about this case, haven't you?
Yes.
On June 18th, you were contacted by telephone by a policeman named Benson, who asked you questions over the telephone, June 18, 2013. Is that right?
Yes.
And on June 22nd, Trooper Benson sent a police car to Boston to pick you up, didn't he?
Yes.
And the police car brought you down to North Attleboro Police Department, didn't it?
Yes.
And they put you in a room, and you were interviewed in that room by 2 police officers, correct?
I don't know if it was an interview, but it was questioned.
You were questioned. And that was audio and video recorded, wasn't it?
Yes.
And shortly thereafter, well, in August of 2013, August 6th, you testified in front of the grand jury about this case, didn't you?
Yes.
In between your questioning in June at North Attleboro Police Station and your grand jury, did you meet with the police and the prosecutors?
Yes.
How many times, sir?
Probably once or twice.
In between your audio and video recorded session on June 22nd and your grand jury testimony on August 6th, you probably met with them once or twice?
That came to me. Yes.
Do you know if either of those sessions, if there were 2, were audio or video recorded?
I believe so.
What makes you believe that they were?
Because I'm not sure if they told me, but I believe they said that it would be recorded.
And after your grand jury testimony, you had another telephone interview with Trooper Eric Benson on August 14th, 2013, didn't you?
I don't recall.
And after that telephone interview on August 14th, you had a further questioning with the police in person, didn't you?
Yes, sometime.
In October of 2013, 2 police officers came to Boston, to your aunt's house,
Yes.
and they met with you and questioned you again, didn't they?
Yes.
And that was Trooper Benson and Detective Origi. Is that right?
Yes.
And they met with you for about 2 hours.
I believe so.
And that was recorded on audio, not on video. Is that right?
I believe so.
Now, after that 2-hour session with the police at your aunt's house, between then and now, sir, have you met with the police and prosecutors on other occasions?
Yes.
How many?
I mean, I can't, like I said, I can't put a number on it.
Can you put an estimate on it for us?
Estimate, I already told you. I already went between 1 to 2, I mean, a couple of times.
Well, no, the 1 to 2 estimate I asked earlier, that was for meetings between your interview session or questioning session in North Attleboro and your grand jury appearance on August 6th. I want you to focus on the period between October 2013, when the 2 police officers came to your aunt's house, and you conducted an interview down in the basement of your aunt's house, correct?
Well, it's not the basement, essentially. It's kind of, she has it's set up, so it's, yeah.
So I'm asking, sir, between October of 2013 and today,
Yes.
how many times did you meet with the police or the prosecutors?
I'm not sure.
And so I'm just asking you, sir, can you estimate how many times you met with them?
I'm not sure.
Was it more than once?
Yes.
Was it more than 3 times?
I'm not sure, no. I don't think so. I don't believe so.
Okay. How many times have you seen the video that we watched today in court?
Once.
Once. When was that?
The same time you said that they came to my aunt's house.
You came to your aunt's house and they showed you that video at your aunt's house, correct?
Yes.
And you've never seen that video again until today sitting in court?
Yes.
And when you saw that video at your aunt's house, like today, you were asked to identify people in the video, weren't you?
Yes.
And from time to time, Trooper Benson would direct your attention to certain people, wouldn't he?
And it's asking if I knew certain people. Yes.
And at one point, you identified a person in a black jacket standing on the sidewalk as Aaron Hernandez, didn't you?
Yes.
And Trooper Benson directed your attention to another person in a white sweatshirt, didn't he?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Joseph, you were a friend of Odin Lloyd's, correct?
Yes.
And you've known him since you were children, correct?
Yes.
And you were, when Odin was in town, you two would socialize on the weekends.
Yes.
And you would go to Fayston Street and kind of hang out on Fayston Street, correct?
Yes.
And when we're talking about Fayston Street, hanging out there, we don't mean necessarily in Odin's home, do we?
Not all the time, no.
Because there's another relative that's on that street, correct?
Yes.
You kind of hang out between the homes, isn't that right?
Well, sometimes, but I've hanged out in the house before.
And you know Odin's family.
Yes.
Now, that Friday, you went to Boston to the clubs, You going to heading to a venue or rumor, correct?
Yes.
Now, when you and Odin would socialize on other occasions, you would go to clubs, wouldn't you?
Yes.
And you and Odin would go to Club Unity in Boston, wouldn't you?
Sometimes, yes.
And Club Unity is kind of a Caribbean community club, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a nightclub. It's a night spot, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then sometimes you would go downtown. You and Odin would go downtown. I'm talking about not Friday, June 14th, but on other occasions, you've gone downtown, you and Odin, to the clubs downtown.
Yes.
And on other occasions, you've gone to Rumor.
I mean, I believe I've been there once, like I said,
Okay.
before that.
Now, in June of 2014, you were aware that Odin knew Aaron Hernandez, weren't you?
Yes.
And 2013, pardon me. Thank you, Mr. Rankin. And you'd known that for about a year, hadn't you?
Yes.
You knew that Odin's girlfriend was the sister of Aaron's girlfriend, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that sometimes Aaron and Odin would hang together.
Objection, Your Honor.
See.
Yes.
There's no question that answer, so it's stricken.
On Friday, directing your attention, sir, to Friday, June 14th, I think you stated that after work, you were hanging out on Fayston Street, correct?
Yes.
And that's fairly normal. That's a regular occurrence, Friday afternoon after work, correct?
Yes.
And there was discussion that you talked about on direct about what you intended to do that night, correct?
Yes.
And one of the options that was discussed was going to Unity, correct?
Yes.
And that's in part because Unity that night, they had a $10 special all-night charge. Is that correct?
Well, if I believe Friday, Unity's a $5 Friday, every Friday. So.
Okay. But at some point, you and your friends decided that you would go downtown, correct?
Yes.
And that you would go to Rumor.
Yes.
And as I understand it, that was because it was Jules's birthday. There was a trip downtown to kind of celebrate Jules's birthday or Jabbett's birthday together.
Yes.
And at some point, you let Odin know you were going to Rumor, correct?
Yes.
And then you and your group drove there, didn't you?
Yes.
And you entered the club and got there, I think you said around 11 or after 11?
Yeah, it was after 11.
And at some point, you saw Odin in the club, didn't you?
Yes.
And Odin was with Glenn, correct?
Yes.
And they came up to you. You were actually dancing with a girl on the dance floor, weren't you?
I could have been.
Okay. And Odin offered to get you a drink. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And he got you a Hennessy and Red Bull, correct?
Yes.
And that's fairly typical when you and Odin were at a club. Whoever got there first would sort of get a drink for the other one. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, after that drink, Odin brought you that drink. Is that right, sir?
Yes.
After that, you didn't stay with him the whole night, did you?
No.
He kind of went his way, correct?
Yes.
And you went your way.
Yes.
And there was lots of activity in the club that night, correct?
Yes.
There was dancing and there was girls and guys, correct?
Yes.
And the bars and the DJ were all working, correct?
Yes.
And that's fairly normal as well, correct?
Yeah.
And the man you later identified as Aaron Hernandez, you never saw him in that club that night, did you?
Did I see him? Yes.
But I mean, you didn't know who he was when you saw him. Let me rephrase that, I'm sorry. You didn't know who he was when you see these photos and look back now. At the time, you didn't know who he was.
At the time, no.
And you never spoke to that gentleman,
No.
didn't interact with him in any way,
No.
correct? And just before the club closed, there was a point where the lights come on, correct?
Yes.
And that's the point where everyone sort of moves towards the door and heads out onto Warrington Street.
Correct.
And before you left the club and throughout that evening, did you ever see Odin again inside the club?
Before, other than the drink, no.
Okay. And when you left, as the lights came on and you moved to the drive to the doorway, you saw Odin up ahead of you, didn't you?
Yes.
And Odin was moving with the crowd, wasn't he?
Yes.
And you and the others were all moving with the crowd out the door.
Yes.
And based on your experience and going to other clubs, I mean, that's closing time. Everyone moves to the door, correct?
Yes.
So that was a fairly regular occurrence, a normal occurrence. Everyone
Yes.
walking out like we saw on that video, everyone walking out, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you got outside the club, you mentioned you saw Odin briefly on the sidewalk, correct?
Yes.
And then you saw him walk up the street, isn't that right?
Yes.
And you lost sight of him. You didn't see him again, isn't that right?
Yes.
So when you pointed things out on the video, you were looking at the video and pointing things out, but you hadn't seen them that night, correct?
Prior, no.
While you were there,
No.
at the same time, you didn't see those things. You're pointing those out on the video, correct?
Not all of them, but Odin, yes.
Yeah. And that's the same video that Trooper Benson brought to your aunt's house and showed you down in that first floor area where you met, correct?
Yes.
In fact, you don't have any memory of seeing Aaron Hernandez outside the club that night, do you?
That night, no.
Now, I wanted to ask you a little bit about how that night ended. So you went to the sidewalk with your friends, correct?
Yes.
And at some point, Glenroy left, didn't he?
Yes.
And he went to get the number of a girl, didn't he?
Yes.
And then Glenroy came back.
Yes.
And you guys, you left in the direction that's really not shown on the video, isn't that right?
Yes.
Because if you came out of rumor, you went right, isn't that right?
Yes.
And Odin went left.
Correct.
And you don't know, sir, what Odin did for the rest of the night that night, do you?
No.
And you don't know what Aaron did for the rest of the night that after closing 2 a.m. on now Saturday morning, June 15th. You don't know what he did either.
No.
And you got in the car and you all drove home?
Yes.
Was Glenn Roy in the car?
Yes.
But there wasn't any discussion about Aaron Hernandez in the car, was there?
No.
Now, on Saturday morning, Odin came to visit you at your home, correct?
Yes.
And again, that's normal behavior, isn't
Yes.
it, for your friend, Mr. Lloyd?
Yes.
And I think you mentioned he was driving a black Suburban.
Yes.
And that Suburban was not his, was it?
No.
Would you say Odin was in good spirits when you saw him?
Regular.
Regular. And the two of you visited for a time at your house, is that right?
Yes.
And then you got dressed and the two of you left, isn't that right?
No.
Well, at some point, didn't you go to Odin's game later that day?
Later that day, yes.
Okay. How did you get to Odin's game?
He picked me up.
And what did he pick you up in?
The Suburban.
So you and Odin, were you together on Saturday afternoon?
Yes.
What did you guys do on Saturday afternoon?
I went to his game.
Okay. And you said that game was at high school field at Bryant Madison
Madison.
High School?
Field, yep.
Field. So you went and you stayed for the whole game,
Yes.
all of Odin's game?
Yes.
And after that, you left with Odin, didn't you?
Yes.
And again, you guys drove in the black Suburban, correct?
Yes.
And both of you, at some point, then on the Saturday night, this is now Saturday night, June 15th, both of you went out, didn't you?
Yes.
I think you were asked on direct examination whether you socialized on Saturday night with Odin. Do you remember that?
Yeah, correct.
Yes. So you did in fact do that, didn't you, sir?
Yes.
You and Odin drove in the Suburban to Cambridge to a place called Fire and Ice, didn't you?
Yes.
And you went to Fire and Ice because it was a party that for your cousin. Is that right?
Yes.
And you stayed at Fire and Ice till around 2 o'clock in the morning, didn't you?
Yes.
And then you and Odin left Fire and Ice, didn't you?
Yes.
And you went to an after-hours party in Grove Hall, didn't you?
Yes.
And so you left Cambridge at 2 and you went to an after-hours party in Grove Hall, and you stayed at that after-hours party for about 2 hours, didn't you?
I'm not sure if it was that long, but not sure if it was that long.
Okay.
I'm sure it's
Now, after the party in Grove Hall, Odin drove you home, didn't he?
Yes.
He drove you home in that Suburban and dropped you off?
Yes.
And that was in the early morning hours of Sunday, June 16th, correct?
Yes.
Now, on Sunday, you got up around 11:30 or 12, is that right?
Can't recall the exact time.
And you went to the band launching that was held that day, didn't you?
Yes.
And I think you testified on direct examination. That's kind of a West Indian or Caribbean cookout, right? Where you celebrate the costumes that are used
I'm not celebrating, actually displaying them, the costumes that they're going to be using for that year.
for the festival.
Yes.
But it's a party, correct?
Although I called it a cookout.
Okay, cookout. That's fair enough. It's a cookout. It's a West Indian style cookout, correct?
Cookout.
Okay. And Odin met you there, didn't he?
Yes.
And the two of you stayed for a while, correct?
Yes.
And then you moved on to another cookout on Evelyn Street in Mattapan, is that right?
Yes.
And Odin didn't join you at that cookout, though, did he?
No.
And while you were at that cookout, you had some phone contact with Odin, didn't you?
Yes.
And at some point, your cell phone was very low on battery, wasn't it?
Yes.
And so you borrowed the cell phone of your cousin, Shanique. Is that correct?
Well, yes, the phone is in her name, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear you, sir.
The phone is in her name, yes.
The phone is in her name.
Yes.
But you weren't using your phone because it was very low on battery, correct?
Yes.
And so you used another phone.
Yes.
And you called Odin a couple of times, didn't you?
Yes.
And one time you called him to arrange the purchase of some marijuana for someone at that cookout.
No.
Well, didn't you call Odin and ask him to help arrange the purchase of marijuana for someone at that cookout?
No.
So, Mr. Joseph, you went through a number of the interviews you had with the police. You remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember speaking with Trooper Eric J. Benson about telephone calls in an interview he conducted on August 14, 2013?
Yes.
You remember that interview?
Yes.
And he asked you about certain calls that were made, didn't he?
Yes.
And you explained the calls that you made
Yes.
to Odin, didn't you?
Yes.
He also asked you about calls that Odin made, didn't he?
Yes.
And when you had that interview, you obviously wanted to be very accurate with him, correct?
Yes.
And didn't you tell Trooper Benson, Akil Joseph explained that he called Odin Lloyd on the night of Sunday, June 16, 2013, in order to try to purchase marijuana for another individual who was at the same cookout that he, Akil Joseph, was attending on the night of Sunday, June 16, 2013. Didn't you tell Trooper Benson that, sir?
Well, that's how he wrote it up, but that wasn't my exact words.
What were your exact words?
Well, I told him that I contacted Odin to figure out if he knew anybody that had marijuana in the area.
Yeah, I don't mean to say you're trying to buy it from Odin. I'm just saying, did you call him to try to arrange the purchase of marijuana for someone else at that cookout?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you called him again. Well, while we're on that subject of marijuana, you're Odin's close friend, correct?
Yeah.
You've been with him, you socialize with him every weekend.
Yes.
Odin was very, very good at rolling marijuana blunts, wasn't he?
Yes.
And he did that a lot, didn't he?
Yeah.
Now, you also spoke to Odin about a ride home, didn't you?
Yes.
And did you call him to ask for a ride, or did he call you to just for whatever reason?
Well, he called me at first, and then I called him back because I didn't answer the call. I don't remember, but I didn't call him. He called me first, and I called him back.
Okay. And Odin came and picked you up, didn't he?
Yes.
And he came from, well, he came to where you were located, which was on Evelyn Street in Mattapan.
Oh, yeah, the corner of Evelyn and Blue Hill.
Evelyn and what, sir?
Blue Hill, yeah.
Evelyn and Blue Hill. And when he picked you up, what was he driving?
The Suburban.
That same black Suburban that you had been in on the previous day?
Yes.
And when he picked you up, Odin had a can of Red Bull with him, didn't he? Good at rolling marijuana blunts, wasn't he?
Yes.
And he did that a lot, didn't he?
Yeah.
Now, you also spoke to Odin about a ride home, didn't you?
Yes.
And did you call him to ask for a ride, or did he call you to just for whatever reason?
Well, he called me at first, and then I called him back because I didn't answer the call. I don't remember, but I didn't call him. He called me first, and I called him back.
Okay. And Odin came and picked you up, didn't he?
Yes.
And he came from, well, he came to where you were located, which was on Evelyn Street in Mattapan.
Oh, yeah, the corner of Evelyn and Blue Hill.
Evelyn and what, sir?
Blue Hill, yeah.
Evelyn and Blue Hill. And when he picked you up, what was he driving?
The Suburban.
That same black Suburban that you had been in on the previous day?
Yes.
And when he picked you up, Odin had a can of Red Bull with him, didn't he? You believe that Odin was weighing some options for that night, wasn't he?
Sustained.
And Odin also texted that woman while he was with you, didn't he?
Not sure.
Now, he dropped you off around 1:40 in the morning. Is that right, sir?
I believe so, yes.
So the ride from the cookout probably took, what, about 10 minutes?
Yeah.
And he dropped you off at your home on Codman Hill at around 20 minutes of 2 on Monday morning, June 17th. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you, sir. I have nothing further.
You're saying it's around 1:40 in the morning, is that right?
I believe so.
Okay, but you're not exactly
I'm
sure.
not.
That's an approximate.
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Nothing, Your Honor.
You may sit down.
Could we break at this time, Your Honor?
Sure.
Thank you.
We're going to suspend at this time. Keep your mind suspended. Please continue to avoid anything at all about this case or Mr. Hernandez that could appear in any newspaper, on television, or radio, or magazine, or in any other media, or any social media, Facebook, Twitter, or anywhere else. Please continue to avoid speaking or emailing or texting or otherwise communicating in any form with anyone, including each other, about this case or Mr. Hernandez. And if anyone starts to communicate with you in any fashion about this case or your jury service or Mr. Hernandez, please end the communication immediately. Please do not do any research about this case, Mr. Hernandez, or anything you think might be relevant in any way to this case. Also, as I told you yesterday, there will not be a session on Monday at all. We'll resume on Tuesday morning, and we will be going full day on Wednesday. Have a wonderful weekend.
Hear ye. All persons having anything further to do before the Honorable, the Justice E. Susan Gosh of the Superior Court, now sitting at Fall River within and for the Commonwealth, depart and give your attendance here Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., to which time and place the sitting of this court is now adjourned. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Court is now adjourned.